Control promises safety the way a mirage promises water. It glitters at the edge of our hunger and draws us forward with the thirst of fear, yet when we arrive it dissolves into heat and shimmering air. We clutch at life as if it were a wild horse that must be broken, fitted with bridle and saddle, trained to carry us exactly where we think we should go. We cling to schedules, to identities, to reputations, to forecasts, to the careful numbering of days, and we whisper to ourselves, quietly, so that life does not hear, that if we can just arrange the pieces correctly, if we can tighten the bolts and lock the doors, reality will stop moving long enough for us to feel safe. But reality does not stop. It is the river and the tide, the monsoon and the moonlight. It cannot be pinned without pinning yourself. All control is a bargain with illusion, and the cost of that bargain is intimacy with the living moment. Surrender is not defeat. Surrender is the exquisite art of breathing with what is, of letting the world do its dance without demanding it bow to your choreography. To surrender is to discover that you are not standing outside the universe trying to manage it. You are the universe in a particular pattern, playing at being a manager. We don't hold the waves back from the shore. The waves hold us, lift us, drop us, and we learn to surf. Safety, properly understood, is not the lock on the door. It is the recognition that you are not separate from the storm that rattles it. When you know the wind as your own breath, you do not fear the gust. When you know the sea as your own blood, you do not dread the swell. The truth is daring. The freedom you seek in control is already present in letting go. Now, I am not suggesting the sort of fatalism that shrugs at the world and refuses to care. Caring is the pulse of participation. I am suggesting that the more strenuously you attain, MPT, to freeze the flux, the more you insist that life be shaped to your plan, the more brittle you become. Fragility masquerades as strength when it is backed by rigid rules, but bend a little and you will feel the sap rise. The great secret is that surrender is a more precise instrument than control. It listens, it feels, it responds without the panic of a prearranged script. Control muffles the music to count the beats. Surrender dances. Consider a simple breath. Try to control it perfectly. Measure the inhale, count the exhale, calculate the pause, and you soon discover a clenched throat and a mind tangled in its own metronome. Allow the breath, and you discover that breathing happens by itself. You are being breathed by life. That is the doorway. And once you see it in the breath, you can see it everywhere. In the way thoughts arise unbidden, in the way love arrives and leaves footprints, in the way loss chisels the heart into a shape that can receive. Control seeks to bind these movements. Surrender receives them as teachers, as tides, as the very texture of being. Let us look more closely at the machinery of control. It begins with a subtle superstition, the belief that the self is a little pilot in the head, steering the body through a foreign universe. The pilot feels alone and therefore anxious. It plots smaller skies and narrower lanes, confuses maps with territory, and praises itself for staying within lines it drew last night. This pilot is an echo, a linguistic trick, a story about me that the body and the world keep disproving with every heartbeat. The world is not outside you any more than the ocean is outside the wave. Yet the pilot insists, I must be in charge, and so it takes what is fluid, experience, and tries to pour it into molds. The molds crack. The pilot blames the world. Round we go. Paradoxically, control thrives on the very uncertainty it hates. The more uncertain life appears, the more the pilot tightens its hands. But uncertainty is not the enemy. It is the shimmer of possibility. A sky without weather would be a dead lid over a dead planet. The unknown, far from being a void to be filled with plans, is the field in which relationship happens. When you relate to life as something to be related with, rather than an inert mass to be managed, you discover the intimacy of participation. You and the moment are co-creating each other. Imagine a garden. Suppose you try to control it absolutely. Plastic flowers that never wilt, synthetic grass that never grows, recorded birds that never miss a note. It looks tidy and nothing is real. Or you plant what you love, attend to soil and sun, nourish and prune, and accept that sometimes the rain will come too hard or not at all. This second garden is alive. Surrender is not abandoning care. It is caring without the fantasy of domination. The gardener does not control the spring. The gardener collaborates with it. There is another superstition that keeps the pilot awake at night, the sense that life is a problem to be solved rather than a song to be played. We think if we only had the right doctrine of control, time management, emotional fencing, spiritual analytics, we could reach a final state where nothing surprises us and thus nothing hurts. But the price of a life without surprise is a life without wonder, and a life without wonder is too small for the soul. The very word solve suggests a dissolving, a loosening. Strangely enough, to solve life is to let it dissolve the rigid boundaries with which you have encircled it. Try this. Pick up a cup of tea and decide, in this very moment, not to control the experience, but to surrender to it. Notice the warmth moving into your fingers, the slight curl of steam against your face, the quiet between sips. You may find that the tea is drinking you. The entire event is a single happening of world and you. Control would reduce it to a checklist: temperature, flavor notes, antioxidants. Surrender lets the tea be tea and the you be you, and both are one happening. When you can taste that unity in small, ordinary moments, you are being initiated into the great mystery with no certificate required. The mind, of course, will object. It will say, if I surrender, I will lose myself, I'll be swept away. But consider the ocean again. The wave never loses itself by realizing it is water. It simply stops fighting other waves. Surrender does not erase your uniqueness. It reveals its water nature. Then uniqueness stops being a barricade and becomes a gift. You speak more clearly when you are not defending an illusion. Control's last refuge is anxiety about mortality. It whispers, if only I could secure the future, I would be safe from ending. But endings are the weavers of meaning, a song without a final note, a story without a last page, a day that never turns to night. These are not experiences, they are prisons. Mortality is the frame that makes the picture possible. Surrender to impermanence is not nihilism, it is courage to love within limits, to participate fully because your time is precious, to recognize that the arc of your life is drawn by a hand that is also your own. The mystery is not solved by controlling the end, but by surrendering into the depth of the present, where beginning and ending are two names for the same movement. So you see, control is a salesman promising insurance against the nature of things. And surrender is the simple, radical realization that you are the nature of things. When this is seen, conduct changes, not by command, but by resonance. You begin to move with the currents rather than against them. You stop trying to outshout the orchestra and learn to play your instrument so that it enriches the whole. That is sanity, and it starts quietly with a breath you do not own. Let us bring this into the workshop of daily life, where tools are sticky with use and the floor is littered with projects half-built. You wake with a plan. You step into the day armed with calendars and clocks, and that is fine, useful even, so long as you remember that tools are for shaping participation, not for resisting reality. The practical art of surrender looks like flexibility in the midst of fidelity, faithful to your deepest intention, flexible with how it manifests. Can't she down? The relationships. Control tries to make the other person an accessory to a story already written. You find yourself editing their lines, managing their reactions, guarding your image. This is not intimacy. It is a rehearsal with unwilling actors. Surrender, on the other hand, turns a conversation into discovery. You listen without arming your replies. You notice the subtle weather of the other's face, the way silence falls like a feather between sentences. You stop measuring love by how closely it matches your expectations and begin to feel love as the spaciousness in which two beings appear and change. Arguments become less about victory and more about shared clarity. This is not romanticism, it is craft. Work, too, blooms under surrender. Control divides attention into hard angles. I must force this result. I must fight this moment until it yields. The body tightens, creativity contracts. Surrender aligns action with awareness. It asks, what is the intelligent next step that the situation invites? Not the fantasy step, but the step that belongs to this unfolding. You are not abandoning standards, you are seeing more of the field. Often the intelligent step is effort. Sometimes it is rest. Sometimes it is a courageous conversation that loosens the knot more than a week of grinding would do. When effort is chosen, not as a weapon against reality, but as a dance with it, effort ceases to be exhausting. It sings. Try a small practice. Choose one ordinary task you perform daily, washing dishes, responding to messages, walking down the street, and let it be a temple. Bring your attention like a steady flame. Feel the texture of the dish, the temperature of the water, the arc of your arm. Notice the urge to rush, the tiny quiver of impatience, and smile at it like an old friend who always arrives too early. When you are walking, let your feet be curious about the ground. When you answer messages, read the human between the lines. This is not a technique to get somewhere else. It is a way of discovering that you are already somewhere holy. In such moments, control melts because there is nothing left to secure. Presence is its own security. Surrender is practical in seasons of loss as well. When something dear dissolves, job, home, person, you may feel a frantic tightening. How do I stop the bleeding? You cannot stop the change, but you can stop adding the violence of resistance. Grief, met without control, is a wise river that knows the way to the sea. It will carry you, it will carve you, and then it will open your mouth to the larger air. To surrender to grief is to trust that the heart is an alchemist. It can transmute the lead of pain into a kind of gold that is not possession but compassion. This gold does not glitter, it warms. A note on goals. Make them, by all means. Aim the bow. But understand that aiming is different from strangling. A goal can be a compass that orients your steps without imprisoning them. The archer breathes, relaxes, feels wind and distance, and in that relaxation, the arrow learns to fly. When the shot is released, the world decides. And if the arrow falls short, you listen, you learn, you aim again, not out of self-contempt, but out of the joy of participation. Control is obsessed with the scoreboard. Surrender is fascinated by the game. Another practice, gentleness toward your inner weather. When anxiety storms, control will try to banish it with orders. That usually compounds the storm with thunder of shame. Surrender says, anxiety is a guest in this house. Make tea for it. Sit with it. Ask it, not intellectually but with feeling, what it is trying to protect. Often it is guarding a childlike need for reassurance. Meet that need with warmth from the center of your chest, not with arguments from the head. This is not indulgence, it is skill. The guest, once acknowledged, does not overstay. And then there is creativity. Control tries to write from the conclusion backward. It produces lifeless certainty. Surrender writes to discover the sentence you could not have predicted. It paints to see what the hand knows before the mind catches up. It plays an instrument until the room begins to breathe along. Creative flow is the child of attention married to not knowing. Control is terrified of not knowing. But in genuine practice, not knowing is the spring. You dip the bucket and raise something wet with truth. Now let us widen the lens to the transformation that surrender invites. When you loosen your grip, you begin to notice that the sense of I is softer than you supposed. It is less like a stone and more like a whirlpool, a form that keeps its shape by moving. The whirlpool is not separate from the river, it is the river in a particular mood. So with you are a pattern of the total. When you stop insisting on being the pilot, you discover yourself as the pilot's sky. This recognition does not erase your personal life, it blesses it. Ordinary acts are haloed by the insight that there is only one event happening, the universe, expressing itself as tree and traffic, and you with your keys in your hand. Letting go of the ego is often misunderstood as a violent act, a kind of spiritual vandalism. But the ego does not need to be smashed. It needs to be seen through, tenderly, like a costume after the play. You hang it up. You bow to it for its service. And you step into the street as the night air touches your skin, feeling the unscripted city opening around you. The clarity that arises is not a sterile emptiness. It is vibrant and responsive. Peace is not a frozen lake, but a lake so still it mirrors everything without distortion. In this peace there is space for laughter, for tears, for the whole weather of being. Spiritual freedom, then, is not elsewhere. It is the immediate ease of being exactly what you are. This breath, this sensation, this thought coming and going without being handcuffed to it. When you no longer identify with the passing contents of awareness, you can participate in them fully because you are not threatened by their departure. Joy arrives, you bow. Sorrow arrives, you bow. The bowing is the freedom. It is the gesture of surrender writ into the body. Meaning, too, changes its flavor. When you were chasing control, meaning was a trophy, a fixed point, you hope to nail to your wall. But meaning is alive, a conversation between your particular nature and the world's unfolding. It ripens as you do. The more you surrender, the more meaning shows up in unplanned places, in the face of a stranger on a bus, in the way sunlight rests on a chipped windowsill, in the sudden relief of forgiving someone who hasn't asked for it. Life ceases to be an argument to win and becomes a relationship to explore. You find that you are carried by a trust that needs no guarantees because it is not a contract, it is kinship. Let us finish together in stillness. Sit as you are. Let your body settle into its own weight. Loosen the plan for the next 10 minutes. Let listening be your posture. Hear the room, the faint hum, the distant rhythm, the subtle song of your own body. Feel the breath, not to manage it, but to be its guest. Release the habit of holding the mind like a fist. Let it open like a hand receiving rain. If a thought comes that says, "Am I doing this right?" let that thought be a cloud passing through the same wide sky that holds everything. The sky does not control the clouds. It allows them. It is not passive. It is vast. Now gently turn the attention that looks outward back toward its source, not to find an object, but to notice the simple luminous fact of awareness itself, clear, open, pristine, prior to every plan. Rest there for a moment, as if sitting on the doorstep of your own home. This is the taste of surrender, nothing added, nothing removed. From here, when you rise and return to the world of tasks and conversations, you will find that the river moves you as you move within it. You will plan, but lightly. You will act, but playfully. You will care, you will care more deeply than ever. But the caring will be freed from the nervous habit of control. Compassion becomes intelligent. Intelligence becomes kind. Remember this. Control promises safety by shrinking the field of life until it fits your grip. Surrender delivers reality by opening your hand and letting the field reveal its own intelligence, which includes you. To live like this is not to drift. It is to steer with the current rather than against it. It is to trust that what you truly are cannot be injured by the changes that terrify your plans. It is to find, even in uncertainty, a steadiness that does not depend on outcomes. The steadiness is presence itself. As we close, let the following words be a bell rather than an instruction. Be as you are, thoroughly. Feel the breath breathing itself. Feel the world touching you on all sides. Let the next moment arrive without being summoned. Bow to it, and then to the next, and to the next, until bowing is simply the way you walk. In this bow, you do not lose yourself. You recognize yourself as the space of the bow, quiet, spacious, intimate with all things. And from this intimacy, move gently into your life, where nothing needs to be controlled to be loved, and nothing needs to be forced to be real.